You can't just ignore the bylaws.
At your I beg.
These are outdated rules, and you know it.
You know that sinking feeling when you pull up to your mountain house after 6 months away, expecting peace and quiet, only to find a sold sign planted in your front yard like some kind of territorial flag? Yeah, that was my Tuesday morning. Tell me where you're watching from. And has anyone ever tried to steal your property while you were away? I'm Detective Sarah Chun, 23 years with the Denver PD, recently retired to enjoy my little slice of heaven in the Colorado Rockies. This place wasn't just a house. It was my sanctuary. 3 bedrooms, wraparound deck, and the kind of view that makes city stress melt away like snow in spring. My late husband Jake and I had saved for 15 years to buy it. After he passed 2 years ago, it became my lifeline. I'd been visiting my sister in Portland for the holidays, planning to stay through New Year's. But when she came down with pneumonia and had to be hospitalized, I cut the trip short. Good thing I did. As I sat in my truck, staring at that sold sign, my cop instincts kicked in. The sign was from Pinnacle Realty, never heard of them. The lockbox on my front door was new, and there was a moving truck backing up my driveway. What the hell? I grabbed my badge out of habit, then remembered I was retired. Still, 23 years of police work doesn't just evaporate. I approached the moving crew with the kind of calm authority that makes people nervous. Excuse me, gentlemen. This is my house. Mind explaining what's going on? The crew chief, a burly guy with Rocky Mountain Movers on his shirt, looked genuinely confused. Ma'am, we got orders to clear out this place for the new owners. Got the paperwork right here. He handed me a work order dated 3 days ago. New owners. The phrase hit me like a slap. I pulled out my phone and called the number on the work order. A chipper voice answered. Pinnacle Realty, this is Madison. This is Sarah Chun. You apparently sold my house at 847 Pine Ridge Road without my knowledge. Care to explain? Long pause. Oh, Ms. Chun, we've been trying to reach you. Your HOA representative, Mrs. Whitmore, said you defaulted on your dues and authorized the emergency sale to cover the debt. Mrs. Whitmore. Of course. Karen Whitmore, the self-appointed queen of Pine Ridge Estates HOA. The woman who'd sent me 17 violation notices in 2 years for everything from unapproved wind chimes to excessive bird feeding. I'd ignored most of them because, frankly, half were completely fabricated. I never defaulted on anything, I said, my voice dropping to that cop tone that usually makes people reconsider their life choices. And Karen Whitmore has zero authority to sell my property. Well, she had all the proper documentation, Madison stammered. Power of attorney, lien certificates, the whole package. The sale closed yesterday. Power of attorney. I'd never signed any such document. This was either the most elaborate mistake in real estate history, or Karen had just committed several felonies. I told the movers to stop immediately and called my lawyer, Tom Bradley. He'd handled Jake's estate and knew my situation. Sarah, this is impossible, Tom said after I explained. You're current on all your obligations. I have your HOA payment records right here. You're actually 6 months ahead. And no one can sell your house without your signature, period. Then how did this happen? Someone forged documents. This is fraud, possibly identity theft. We need to see those papers immediately. I drove straight to Pinnacle Realty, a cramped office wedged between a pizza place and a dry cleaner in downtown Fairmont. Madison turned out to be a nervous 20-something who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. I'm so sorry, Ms. Chun. Mrs. Whitmore seemed so official. She had letterhead, notarized documents, even a court order for the lien. She handed me a manila folder thick with papers. My hands shook slightly as I flipped through them, and my blood pressure spiked with each page. There was a power of attorney with my forged signature. HOA violation notices for properties I'd never owned. A lien certificate claiming I owed $47,000 in fees and fines. And a court judgment dated just last week, ordering the sale of my property. But here's the thing about being a cop for 2 decades. You learn to spot fake documents. The court seal was wrong. The judge's signature didn't match public records. And the notary stamp? I knew that notary. She'd been dead for 3 years. Madison, I said, keeping my voice level, you need to reverse this sale immediately. These documents are forgeries. I can't. The money's already been transferred. The new owners take possession tomorrow. New owners. Who bought it? Madison hesitated, then pulled up her computer screen. Whitmore Holdings, LLC. I actually laughed. Karen hadn't just forged documents to steal my house. She'd bought it herself through a shell company. The sheer audacity was almost impressive. Madison, I need copies of everything. And I need the name of every person involved in this transaction. 20 minutes later, I walked out with a complete file and a growing sense that Karen Whitmore had made the biggest mistake of her life. She'd just tried to steal property from a retired detective who had nothing but time, resources, and a very particular set of skills. I sat in my truck outside the realty office, flipping through the forged documents again. Each page revealed new layers of Karen's scheme. She'd created fake HOA bylaws giving herself emergency powers, forged my signature on documents I'd never seen, even fabricated a court case that never existed. But she'd made one crucial error. In all her careful forgery, she'd used the wrong middle initial on my power of attorney. My legal name is Sarah M. Chun, the M for Marie, my mother's name. Karen had used Sarah L. Chun. One letter. That's all it took to prove fraud. I called Tom back. How fast can you file an emergency injunction? If we can prove fraud, I can have papers filed within the hour. Good. Because Karen Whitmore just declared war on the wrong person. As I drove back toward Pine Ridge Estates, I noticed something odd. Karen's house, the massive Tudor monstrosity that violated about 6 architectural guidelines, had a new addition under construction. A 3-car garage where there used to be a garden. Expensive renovation for someone living on a retiree's budget. I parked across the street and watched workers installing what looked like a $15,000 garage door system. Karen emerged from her house, directing the crew with the imperious manner of someone who'd recently come into money. My money. She spotted me and marched over, her face flushed with righteous indignation. Sarah, what are you doing here? You're trespassing on private property. Actually, Karen, I'm parked on a public street. But since you brought up property, I held up the manila folder. Want to explain how you sold my house without my knowledge? Her face went through several interesting color changes. You defaulted on your HOA dues. The board voted to exercise our emergency powers. What board, Karen? You're the only member left. Everyone else resigned because of your harassment. That's not relevant. You owed money. I'm 6 months ahead on all payments. I have bank records. Karen's eye twitched, a tell I'd learned to recognize during interrogations. Well, there were additional fines. Violations you ignored. Like the violation for my illegal American flag? Or the one for having too many Christmas lights. All 3 strings of them. Rules are rules, Sarah. Just because you used to be a cop doesn't mean you're above the law. Used to be. The phrase stung, but it also reminded me of something important. I might be retired from the force, but I still had friends. Contacts. Resources. You're right, Karen. No one's above the law, including you. I got back in my truck and drove home, to my home, where the movers were still waiting for instructions. I told them to unload everything back inside and send the bill to Pinnacle Realty. Then I made a phone call to my old partner, Detective Mike Rodriguez. Sarah, how's retirement treating you? Funny you should ask. I need a favor, Mike. Someone just tried to steal my house using forged court documents. Jesus. You sure know how to pick your enemies. What do you need? Run a background check on Karen Whitmore, 851 Pine Ridge Road, Fairmont, and see if there are any other properties involved in suspicious sales recently. Give me an hour. While I waited, I did what any good detective does. I investigated. Karen's social media was a goldmine of evidence. Photos of her new garage construction, tagged with #blessed and #newbeginnings. A post about finally getting justice against problem neighbors. And most damning of all, a check-in at a luxury spa in Aspen, dated the same day my house was supposedly sold. Nothing says guilty like celebrating your crime on Instagram. Mike called back with interesting news. Your Karen's been busy. 3 other properties in your development have been sold under suspicious circumstances in the past 6 months. All through the same realty company, all involving HOA liens, all bought by shell companies. Shell companies? Whitmore Holdings, Pine Ridge Properties, Mountain View Investments, all registered to the same address. Karen's address. A pattern. Karen wasn't just targeting me. She was running a systematic scheme to steal properties from homeowners who traveled frequently or lived out of state. The perfect victims, people who might not notice forged documents until it was too late. But she'd picked the wrong mark this time. Mike, I need you to contact the DA's office. This is organized fraud, possibly racketeering. And I think Karen's about to discover that some retirees bite back. As the sun set behind the mountains, I sat on my deck, and planned my next move. Karen thought she was dealing with just another elderly homeowner she could intimidate and rob. She was about to learn that this particular homeowner had spent 23 years putting criminals behind bars. Game on, Karen. The next morning, I woke up to find a sheriff's deputy knocking on my door. Not unusual in my line of work, except I was supposed to be retired. Ms. Chun, I'm Deputy Morrison. I have an eviction notice for this property. I looked at the papers. Official letterhead, proper seals, signed by Judge Patricia Hawkins, who I happen to know personally from my court testimony days. The notice gave me 24 hours to vacate due to fraudulent occupation of lawfully sold property. Deputy Morrison, I said calmly, this is my house. I've lived here for 8 years. Someone forged documents to steal it. He looked uncomfortable. Ma'am, I just served the papers. You'll need to take it up with the court. After he left, I called Judge Hawkins directly. We'd worked dozens of cases together over the years. Patricia, it's Sarah Chun. Did you sign an eviction order for my property yesterday? Sarah, good to hear from you. Eviction order? I haven't signed any evictions this week. What's going on? I explained the situation. Patricia was quiet for a long moment. Sarah, someone's forging court documents with my signature. That's a federal crime. I'm calling the FBI. Now we're talking. But Karen wasn't done. An hour later, animal control showed up. Ma'am, we have reports of aggressive animals on this property, said Officer Janet Mills, a woman I'd actually worked with on several cases involving animal cruelty. She knew me well. Janet, it's Sarah Chun. What animals? I don't even have a pet. Janet looked confused. The complaint says you have an unlicensed pit bull that attacked a neighbor. We have photos. She showed me pictures on her tablet. Sure enough, there was a large dog in what looked like my backyard, snarling at someone off camera. The problem? The photos were clearly photoshopped. The lighting was wrong, the shadows didn't match, and I could see the digital artifacts around the dog's edges. Janet, these are fake. Look at the metadata. She examined the photos more closely. You're right. The timestamp says these were taken last month, but the trees in the background have summer foliage. It's January, Sarah. Someone's trying to build a case against me using fabricated evidence. Janet's expression hardened. Who would do that? Karen Whitmore. She's already forged court documents and stolen my house. Now she's trying to make me look like a public menace. I'll file a report about the fake photos. This is getting serious, Sarah. No kidding. Comment below. Would you fight back legally or strike harder? Because Karen's about to escalate this to a whole new level. I spent the afternoon at Tom Bradley's law office, going through every document in the case. Tom had brought in a forensic document examiner, and the results were damning. Every signature is forged, the examiner explained. Same person, same pen, same technique. Whoever did this has practice, but they're not professional. See these hesitation marks? They were copying your signature from something. Copying from what? Tom pulled out a folder. I did some digging. Karen requested copies of your property deed from the county clerk's office 6 months ago. Said she needed it for HOA compliance verification. 6 months ago. That's when Karen started planning this. There's more, Tom continued. I found the real estate listing for your house. It went live the day after you left for Portland. Someone was watching your travel schedule. A chill ran down my spine. How could she know when I was leaving? Social media? Neighbors? Mail hold at the post office. I thought back to my departure. I'd mentioned the Portland trip to exactly 3 people. My sister, my neighbor Bob Martinez, and Karen. She'd stopped by the day before I left, ostensibly to complain about my bird feeders attracting pest wildlife. I'd mentioned I'd be gone for the holidays. She'd been casing me. Tom, we need to move fast. If she's done this to other properties, she might be planning to disappear with the money. Already on it. I've filed for an emergency restraining order and asset freeze. But Sarah. He looked uncomfortable. There's something else. Karen filed a countersuit this morning. For what? Harassment, defamation, and malicious interference with lawful business operations. She's asking for $100,000 in damages. I actually laughed. She steals my house and then sues me for harassment? It's a SLAPP suit, strategic lawsuit against public participation. She's trying to bury you in legal costs and make you give up. Wrong move, Karen. That evening, I decided to do some old-fashioned detective work. I parked down the street from Karen's house and watched. At 7 p.m., a black Mercedes pulled into her driveway. The driver was a thin man in an expensive suit who looked distinctly nervous. I followed him when he left an hour later. He drove to the Fairmont Municipal Building and used a key to enter through a side door. After hours access, I waited until he came out, then followed him to an upscale restaurant downtown. While he ate dinner, I ran his license plate through my old contacts. Bingo. Richard Steinberg, Deputy County Clerk. The same office that would process property transfers and court filings. The same office where Karen had requested copies of my deed. Inside help. I called Mike Rodriguez. I need surveillance on a county employee. I think Karen has someone inside the clerk's office helping her forge documents. Sarah, you know I can't authorize surveillance without. Mike, she's stolen at least 4 houses that we know of. This is organized crime. All right, I'll talk to the lieutenant. But you need to be careful. If Karen's connected to county officials, she might have more resources than we thought. The next morning brought a new surprise. I found my mailbox stuffed with legal notices, all dated from the past week while I was supposedly in Portland. Violation notices for unauthorized structural modifications. My deck, which had been there for 5 years. Illegal landscaping, my vegetable garden. Noise ordinance violations, my wind chimes. Each notice carried escalating fines, from $500 to $5,000. The total came to $23,000. But here's what Karen didn't know. I'd installed a security camera system 2 years ago after a break-in attempt. The cameras had been recording everything, including Karen herself placing these violation notices in my mailbox yesterday while I was at Tom's office. Gotcha. I called Tom immediately. I have video evidence of Karen fabricating HOA violations and backdating documents. That's mail fraud, forgery, and conspiracy. Sarah, this woman's looking at serious. The video footage was even better than I'd hoped. Not only did it show Karen stuffing fake violation notices into my mailbox, but it also captured her talking on her phone while she did it. Just need a few more violations to justify the lien amount. Yeah, make sure the dates look right. She was coordinating with someone. I enhanced the audio using software from my old department. The voice on the other end was male, nervous, and familiar. I'd heard it recently. Richard Steinberg. Tom, I called my lawyer. I need you to file a motion to compel phone records for Karen Whitmore and Richard Steinberg at the county clerk's office. On what grounds? Conspiracy to commit fraud. I have them on tape coordinating the fabrication of legal documents. But Karen wasn't finished escalating. That afternoon, I got a visit from someone claiming to be from Mountain States Property Recovery Services, a company that definitely didn't exist when I ran the name through business registries. The man was large, intimidating, and wearing what looked like a security uniform from a costume shop. His badge was plastic. Ma'am, I'm here to secure this property pending resolution of the ownership dispute. You need to vacate immediately. And you are. Officer Johnson, MSBRS. We're authorized by the court to take possession. I almost felt bad for what I was about to do. Almost. Officer Johnson, can I see your credentials? He fumbled with a wallet and produced what was obviously a fake ID. The lamination was crooked, the photo was pixelated, and the badge number was 00001. Interesting, I said. Because Mountain States Property Recovery Services doesn't exist. I checked. And that uniform? You can buy it online for $39.99. His face went red. Look, lady, I don't want any trouble. Neither do I. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to get in your car and drive away. Then you're going to call Karen Whitmore and tell her that impersonating a law enforcement officer is a felony. He left quickly. I immediately called the real police. Deputy Morrison, the same officer who'd served the fake eviction notice, arrived within minutes. Ms. Chun, what's the situation? Someone just tried to illegally evict me using a fake security officer. I have it all on camera. I showed him the footage. Morrison's expression grew increasingly grim as he watched. Ma'am, this is criminal impersonation. Do you know who sent him? Karen Whitmore. She's been orchestrating a campaign to steal my property using forged documents. Morrison nodded slowly. We've been getting reports about suspicious property transfers in this area. Detective Rodriguez mentioned you might be involved in exposing a fraud ring. A fraud ring. It was bigger than just Karen. Deputy, I think Karen's working with someone in the county clerk's office. They've been forging court documents and property transfers. That's a serious accusation. I have evidence. That evening, I decided it was time to go on the offensive. I'd been reacting to Karen's moves for too long. Time to make some moves of my own. I started by researching every property sale in Pine Ridge Estates over the past year. What I found was disturbing. 7 properties had been sold under suspicious circumstances, all involving HOA liens, all through Pinnacle Realty, all bought by shell companies registered to Karen's address. 7 families. I tracked down the previous owners. Most had been elderly or lived out of state. All had received violation notices they claimed were fabricated. All had supposedly defaulted on HOA dues they insisted they'd paid. Mrs. Eleanor Vasquez, 73, had lost her late husband's workshop to a $15,000 lien for unauthorized storage structures. The workshop had been there for 20 years. Bob and Linda Chun, no relation, a retired couple from Phoenix, lost their vacation cabin to a $22,000 lien for excessive noise violations. They'd been in Arizona the entire time the violations supposedly occurred. Karen had stolen from 7 families. But here's what she didn't know. I'd been documenting everything. Every forged document, every fake violation, every illegal threat. I had a case file that would make any prosecutor salivate. How would you expose Karen in public? Because tomorrow night, she's about to face the entire neighborhood. The next day, Tom called with news that made my blood boil. Sarah, Karen's escalating again. She's filed for an emergency court order to have you arrested for criminal trespass on your own property. Based on what? The forged sale documents. She's claiming you're illegally occupying property that belongs to Whitmore Holdings. Can she do that? Not legally. But if she gets the wrong judge, someone who doesn't look too closely at the paperwork. I felt that familiar surge of determination that had carried me through 23 years of police work. Karen was about to learn that some people don't back down when threatened. Tom, I want you to file a criminal complaint against Karen for fraud, forgery, and conspiracy. I want her arrested. Sarah, that's a big step. Are you sure you have enough evidence? I have video of her fabricating violations, audio of her coordinating with someone in the clerk's office, forged documents with provable inconsistencies, and testimony from 7 other victims. 7 other victims? I explained what I'd found. Tom was quiet for a long moment. Sarah, this isn't just property fraud. This is organized crime. Karen's been running a systematic scheme to steal houses from vulnerable homeowners. Then let's stop her. That afternoon, I got a call from an unexpected source, Madison from Pinnacle Realty. Ms. Chun? I need to talk to you. About Mrs. Whitmore. What about her? She came in today with another property to sell. But when I ran the paperwork, something seemed wrong. The owner's signature looked familiar. Another forgery. Madison, can you meet me somewhere private? This is important. We met at a coffee shop downtown. Madison looked terrified. Ms. Chun, I think Mrs. Whitmore has been using our office to sell stolen properties. When I looked back at the other sales, the signatures all look similar. And the notary stamps. What about them? Some of them are from notaries who don't exist anymore. I checked the state registry. Dead notaries. Karen had been using stamps from deceased notaries to authenticate her forged documents. Madison, are you willing to testify about what you've seen? I could lose my job. You could go to prison for facilitating fraud if you don't. She agreed to cooperate. That evening, I made a decision that would change everything. Pine Ridge Estates was having its monthly HOA meeting tomorrow night, the first one in 6 months, since most of the board had resigned in frustration over Karen's behavior. Time for a hostile takeover. I spent the night preparing a presentation that would expose Karen's entire operation. Forged documents, stolen properties, fake violations, dead notaries, everything. But I also did something else. I invited every homeowner who'd been victimized by Karen's scheme. Eleanor Vasquez, Bob and Linda Chun, the Johnsons, the Patels, the Smiths, and the Garcias. 7 families who wanted their justice. I also invited some special guests, Detective Rodriguez, Deputy Morrison, and Agent Sarah Kim from the FBI's white-collar crime unit. Karen wanted to play games with fake authority figures? Time to meet some real ones. The meeting was scheduled for 7 p.m. at the community center. But at 6:30, I got a call that made my blood run cold. Miss Chun, this is Dr. Martinez at Fairmont General Hospital. We have your neighbor, Bob Martinez, in the emergency room. He's been asking for you. Bob was my closest neighbor, the one person who'd supported me throughout Karen's harassment campaign. If something had happened to him, what's wrong with him? He was found unconscious in his driveway. Possible assault. He keeps saying, tell Sarah. Karen knows. The meeting. Karen knew about tonight's meeting. I raced to the hospital. Bob was conscious but groggy, with a nasty bruise on his head. Sarah, he whispered. Karen came by this afternoon. Asked if I knew what you were planning. When I wouldn't tell her. She got angry. Started yelling about how you were trying to destroy her life. Bob, did she hurt you? I don't remember. I was taking out the trash, then I woke up here. The doctor pulled me aside. Ms. Chun, your friend has a concussion consistent with being struck by a blunt object. We've called the police. Karen had assaulted an elderly man. I called Detective Rodriguez immediately. Mike, Karen Whitmore just put my neighbor in the hospital. I need her arrested now. Sarah, we're already en route to the community center. Are you still planning to go through with the meeting? I looked at Bob, lying in that hospital bed because he tried to protect me. Damn right I am. Karen wants a war? She's got one. As I drove toward the community center, I realized this was no longer just about my house. It was about justice for 7 families, for Bob Martinez, for everyone Karen had hurt in her quest for power and money. Time to end this. The Pine Ridge Estates Community Center was packed when I arrived at 6:45 p.m. Word had spread through the neighborhood about the meeting, and it seemed like everyone wanted to see what would happen. Karen was already there, sitting at the head table with a stack of official-looking documents and wearing what I can only describe as a smug expression. She'd brought reinforcements too, 3 people I didn't recognize, all in cheap suits, trying to look official. More fake authority figures. I took a seat in the back and watched as families filed in. Eleanor Vasquez, looking frail but determined. Bob and Linda Chun, who'd driven up from Phoenix. The Johnsons, the Patels, the Smiths, and the Garcias. All the families Karen had victimized. At exactly 7 p.m., Karen called the meeting to order. Good evening, everyone. As the duly elected president of the Pine Ridge Estates HOA, I want to address some recent disruptions to our community. Duly elected by whom? She was the only board member left. It has come to my attention that certain residents have been spreading malicious rumors about legitimate HOA business. Tonight, we're going to set the record straight. She gestured to her 3 companions. I've brought representatives from our legal team to explain the proper procedures for property transfers and violation enforcement. One of the fake lawyers stood up. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm attorney Michael Harrison from Harrison, Burke & Associates. The recent property transactions in your community have been completely legal and above board. I pulled out my phone and quickly searched for Harrison, Burke & Associates. No such firm existed. Karen continued. Some residents have questioned the validity of HOA liens and property sales. Let me be clear. The board has full authority to enforce community standards, including the sale of non-compliant properties. That was my cue. I stood up. Karen, can you tell us exactly which board members voted to authorize these sales? She looked startled to see me. The board voted unanimously. What board? You're the only member left. Everyone else resigned because of your harassment. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Karen's face flushed. That's not relevant. I have proxy votes from the other members. Proxy votes from people who resigned 6 months ago? You're out of order, Sarah. Security, please remove this disruptive resident. Security? One of her fake lawyers moved toward me, but I held up my hand. Actually, Karen, let's talk about what's really been going on here. I pulled out my laptop and connected it to the community center's projector. I think everyone should see this. The first slide showed a map of Pine Ridge Estates with 7 properties highlighted in red. These are the properties that have been sold by the HOA in the past year. The second slide showed the shell companies, all purchased by companies registered to Karen's address. The third slide was the bombshell, a side-by-side comparison of my forged signature with my real one, and all using forged documents. The room erupted. Karen jumped to her feet. This is defamation. You can't prove any of this. Actually, I can. I clicked to the next slide, a still frame from my security camera showing Karen stuffing fake violation notices into my mailbox. This is you, yesterday, fabricating HOA violations, and backdating them. The crowd was getting angry. And this, I clicked again, is the audio of you coordinating with someone in the county clerk's office to forge legal documents. Karen's voice filled the room. Just need a few more violations to justify the lien amount. Yeah, make sure the dates look right. Game over. Karen was backing toward the exit, but Detective Rodriguez chose that moment to enter through the rear door, followed by Deputy Morrison and Agent Kim from the FBI. Nobody leaves, Rodriguez announced. This is now a crime scene. Karen made a run for it, but she didn't get far. Deputy Morrison tackled her in the parking lot while she was trying to get into her Mercedes. Back inside, Agent Kim addressed the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been investigating a property fraud ring operating in this area. Based on evidence provided by Ms. Chun and others, we're making arrests tonight. The fake lawyers were trying to slip out the side door when more FBI agents appeared. Turns out, attorney Michael Harrison was actually Danny Kowalski, a convicted con man with warrants in 3 states. But the biggest surprise came when they arrested Richard Steinberg, who'd been sitting in the back of the room the entire time, apparently thinking he was just there to observe. He'd walked right into our trap. Agent Kim explained to the crowd, Mr. Steinberg has been using his position in the county clerk's office to facilitate document fraud. We have evidence of at least 12 properties involved in this scheme, with losses exceeding $2 million. 12 properties. It was even bigger than I'd thought. Eleanor Vasquez stood up, tears in her eyes. Does this mean I can get my husband's workshop back? Ma'am, we'll be working to reverse all fraudulent property transfers. It may take time, but justice will be served. The crowd broke into applause. As the FBI led Karen away in handcuffs, she turned and glared at me. This isn't over, Sarah. You have no idea who you're messing with. Agent Kim overheard. Actually, Ms. Whitmore, it is over. You're looking at federal charges for mail fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy, and racketeering. That's 25 to life. 25 to life. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. After the arrests, I stayed to help the FBI collect evidence and take statements from the victims. It was nearly midnight when I finally got home, to my home, which was no longer in dispute. Tom Bradley called the next morning with more good news. Sarah, the court has voided all the fraudulent property sales. Everyone's getting their homes back. What about the money Karen stole? The FBI seized her assets. Turns out she'd been living quite well off her victims' equity. New cars, luxury vacations, that expensive garage edition, all paid for with stolen money. I thought about Bob Martinez, still recovering in the hospital from his concussion. Tom, I want to file a civil suit against Karen for every penny she's worth. Already drafted. But Sarah, there's something else. The FBI wants to talk to you about joining their white-collar crime task force. Apparently, your investigative work impressed them. A job offer. After 6 months of retirement, I was being recruited back into law enforcement. Tell them I'm interested. That afternoon, I visited Bob in the hospital. He was sitting up, looking much better. Sarah, I heard they arrested Karen. Is it true she was stealing houses? 7 houses, Bob. Maybe more. She's going to prison for a long time. Good. That woman was a menace. He paused. I heard she attacked me because I wouldn't tell her about your meeting plans. Bob, I'm so sorry you got hurt because of this. Are you kidding? I helped take down a criminal enterprise. At my age, that's not something you get to do every day. He was proud of his role in Karen's downfall. The local news picked up the story that evening. Retired detective exposes multi-million-dollar property fraud ring. The reporter interviewed several of the victims, all praising my investigation. But the best part was the footage of Karen's perp walk, being led away in handcuffs while neighbors cheered. The woman who'd terrorized an entire community for years, reduced to just another criminal in an orange jumpsuit. Justice served. 3 weeks later, I got a call from Agent Kim. Sarah, we've uncovered the full scope of Karen's operation. 14 properties, $3.2 million in stolen equity, and connections to a larger fraud network operating across 3 counties. Larger network? What do you mean, Agent Kim? Karen wasn't working alone. We've identified at least 6 other HOA presidents running similar schemes. They were sharing techniques, forged documents, even fake notary stamps. I felt that familiar chill of a case getting bigger than expected. How big are we talking? Potentially hundreds of properties. Karen was actually small time compared to some of these operations. We need your help, Sarah. Will you consider consulting on this investigation? Yep, back in the game. When do I start? The next morning, I found myself in the FBI field office, looking at a wall-sized map covered with red pins. Each pin represented a stolen property. The pattern was disturbing. They were targeting vacation homes, elderly residents, and anyone who traveled frequently. Agent Kim introduced me to the task force. Everyone, this is Sarah Chun, the detective who broke open the Whitmore case. She'll be consulting on HOA fraud patterns. Consulting. It felt good to be back. But as I studied the map, something bothered me. The geographic distribution was too organized, too systematic. This wasn't just individual criminals copying each other's methods. Agent Kim, has anyone looked at the timing of these operations? What do you mean? I pulled up the case files on my laptop. Look at the dates. Karen started her scheme in March. This operation in Jefferson County started in April. This one in Boulder County started in May. They're sequential, not simultaneous. Agent Kim studied the timeline. You're right. It's like someone was training them, then moving on to the next target area. A teacher. Someone was organizing this. We need to find the source. Who taught Karen how to forge court documents? Where did she get the idea to use dead notary stamps? The answer came from an unexpected source. Richard Steinberg, facing 20 years in federal prison, decided to cooperate. There was a guy, he told us during his debriefing, called himself a property acquisition consultant. He approached Karen about a year ago, said he could help her monetize problem properties in the HOA. What was his name? Marcus Webb. Had an office in Denver, real professional operation. He provided templates for all the documents, showed Karen how to research property owners, even gave her a list of dead notaries. Marcus Webb. I ran the name through every database I could access. No criminal record, but plenty of civil suits from angry property owners. The man had been running property scams for years. Agent Kim and I drove to Webb's office address in downtown Denver. The building was legitimate, but the suite number led to an empty office with a for lease sign in the window. He was already gone, but Webb had made one mistake. He'd used the same mail forwarding service for all his fake business addresses. It took some persuasion, but the postal clerk eventually gave us his real address. Marcus Webb lived in a $2 million house in Cherry Hills Village, paid for with the proceeds of property fraud. When we arrested him, he was packing for a flight to Costa Rica. No extradition treaty. Webb's house was a treasure trove of evidence. He had files on dozens of HOA presidents across the western United States, complete with training materials on document forgery, property research, and victim selection. This is a franchise operation, Agent Kim realized. He was selling property theft as a business opportunity. Webb's computer contained even more disturbing evidence. Email chains with HOA presidents sharing success stories. A private forum where they traded techniques for avoiding detection. Even a rating system for different types of victims. Elderly widows, 5 stars, easy targets, rarely fight back. Vacation home owners, 4 stars, often absent, slow to notice. Military families, 2 stars, too organized, know their rights. They'd turn property theft into a science. But the most shocking discovery was Webb's client list. Over 200 HOA officials across 12 states, all trained in his methods. Karen Whitmore wasn't an aberration. She was part of a nationwide network. Agent Kim, I said, staring at the scope of the operation, we're going to need a lot more agents. The FBI launched Operation Clean Sweep 3 months later. Coordinated raids in 12 states, targeting every HOA official in Webb's network. The final tally was staggering. 847 properties stolen, $127 million in fraudulent transfers, and 203 arrests. Karen Whitmore, facing the evidence of her role in a nationwide conspiracy, finally broke down and confessed. Not just to the properties in Pine Ridge Estates, but to helping Webb recruit other HOA presidents and sharing techniques with the network. She got 25 years without parole. Marcus Webb, as the ringleader, received 45 years in federal prison. Richard Steinberg got 15 years for his role in facilitating the document fraud. But the real victory was the families getting their homes back. Eleanor Vasquez cried when she got the keys to her husband's workshop. Bob and Linda Chun threw a party when their vacation cabin was returned. 7 families in Pine Ridge Estates, and hundreds more across the country had their lives restored. Justice on a national scale. The case made national news. Retired detective exposes nationwide property theft ring. I did interviews with CNN, Fox News, and 60 Minutes, explaining how the scheme worked and warning homeowners about the signs of HOA fraud. But the best moment came 6 months later when I got a letter from a homeowner in Arizona. Dear Detective Chun, I saw your interview on TV and realized my HOA president was trying to steal my house using the same methods you described. Thanks to your warning, I was able to stop him before he succeeded. You saved my home. That's why we do this job. 1 year after Karen's arrest, Pine Ridge Estates was a different place. The community had elected a new HOA board. Actual neighbors who wanted to maintain property values, not steal properties. The ridiculous violation notices were gone. People actually talked to each other again. I was sitting on my deck, enjoying my morning coffee and the view that Karen had tried to steal when my phone rang. Sarah, it's Agent Kim. We have a situation in Montana. Small town, corrupt HOA president, familiar pattern. Interested? Always. Send me the file. The Montana case was almost identical to Karen's operation, but the local sheriff was either incompetent or complicit. The FBI needed someone with experience in HOA fraud to go undercover. Undercover work at my age. Why not? I spent 2 weeks in Billings, posing as a retiree looking for a vacation home. It took 3 days to identify the corrupt HOA president, 2 more to document his methods, and 1 very satisfying afternoon to watch him get arrested. Some habits never die. The consulting work with the FBI kept me busy, but I also had time for other pursuits. I'd started a blog called HOA Watchdog, warning homeowners about common fraud schemes and helping victims fight back against corrupt boards. The blog got 50,000 visitors in its first month. I also testified before Congress about the need for federal oversight of HOA operations. The hearing was broadcast on C-SPAN, and I got to explain to a room full of senators how easy it was for criminals to exploit the lack of regulation in homeowner associations. Policy work. Another new career. But the most satisfying part of my post-Karen life was the letters. Hundreds of them, from homeowners across the country who'd used my advice to fight back against corrupt HOAs. Some had stopped fraudulent property transfers. Others had exposed embezzlement or vote manipulation. A few had even gotten their HOA boards arrested. An army of informed homeowners is a powerful thing. Bob Martinez recovered fully from his concussion and became something of a local celebrity. He gave tours of the neighborhood to reporters, always ending at the spot where Karen was arrested. Right here, he'd say with satisfaction, is where justice was served. Bob loved his 15 minutes of fame. Eleanor Vasquez got her husband's workshop back and turned it into a community woodworking space where neighbors could learn traditional crafts. She named it Jake's Workshop in honor of my late husband, which made me cry happy tears. Community healing. Tom Bradley, my lawyer, started specializing in HOA fraud cases. He'd handled dozens of similar cases across Colorado, always crediting our work on the Karen case as his inspiration. Even lawyers can find redemption. But the best news came 18 months after Karen's arrest. Agent Kim called with an update that made my day. Sarah, remember Marcus Webb's property theft franchise? We've shut down every single operation. The last HOA president was arrested yesterday in Oregon. It's over. Nationwide justice. What's the final count? 1,247 properties recovered, $186 million in fraudulent transfers reversed, 312 criminals behind bars. And it all started with you refusing to let Karen steal your house. One person can make a difference. That evening, I sat on my deck again, watching the sunset over the mountains. The same view Karen had tried to steal, the same peace she'd tried to destroy. But instead of bitterness, I felt gratitude. Gratitude for 23 years of police work that taught me how to fight back. Gratitude for neighbors like Bob Martinez who stood by me. Gratitude for professionals like Tom Bradley and Agent Kim who believed in justice. And yes, even gratitude for Karen Whitmore, whose greed and arrogance had exposed a nationwide criminal network. Sometimes the bad guys do us a favor by overreaching. My phone buzzed with a text message from Agent Kim. New case in Nevada. Casino town, corrupt HOA, missing elderly residents. Interested? I looked at my peaceful mountain view, then at the message. Some fights are worth taking. I texted back, Send me the details. Because that's what we do. We fight for justice, we protect the innocent, and we make sure that criminals like Karen Whitmore learn that some people don't back down when threatened. Justice never retires. 3 years later, Pine Ridge Estates was featured in Better Homes and Gardens as an example of a well-managed community. The article mentioned the unfortunate incident with a corrupt board member, but focused on the positive changes that followed. Karen Whitmore died in federal prison 2 years into her sentence. Heart attack, the warden said. I felt no satisfaction in her death, only sadness that she'd wasted her life on greed and power instead of contributing something positive to the world. Even criminals deserve basic human dignity. Marcus Webb is still serving his 45-year sentence. He sends me a Christmas card every year from prison, always with the same message. You won this round, Detective Chun. Respect. Professional courtesy between adversaries. I'm 67 now, officially retired from consulting work, but still writing the HOA Watchdog blog. It has 200,000 subscribers and a staff of volunteer investigators across the country. We've helped expose corruption in over 500 homeowner associations. The work continues. Bob Martinez is 78 and still gives those neighborhood tours, though he's added stories about the other criminals we've caught over the years. He calls himself the unofficial Pine Ridge Estates historian. Everyone needs a purpose. And me? I'm sitting on my deck again, watching another sunset over the Colorado Rockies. The same view that started this whole adventure when I came home to find a sold sign in my yard. Home. Worth fighting for. My phone is silent tonight. No new cases from the FBI. But tomorrow there might be. There's always another Karen Whitmore somewhere, thinking she can steal what doesn't belong to her. And there's always someone willing to stop her. Because that's what we do. We stand up to bullies. We fight for what's right. We protect our homes, our families, and our communities from those who would exploit them. That's the real lesson here. Karen thought she was stealing a house. Instead, she created an army of informed homeowners who refused to be victims. Not a bad legacy for a retired detective. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe for more tales of justice served. And remember, if someone tries to steal your property, don't back down. Fight back. The law is on your side. Stay vigilant, stay informed, and never let the Karens win.